people hear about my background, I usually get two responses. One response is, you obviously made up the whole thing. You know, you made up the whole phony bio. And if you were going to make up such a phony bio, why one like this? Like, what made you pick this phony bio rather than something else? That's one question. The other question I get asked by people who actually know me is, well, then how do you actually do it? You know, like, what's the actual secret of doing that? I'm going to give you the short answer really fast, and I'll give you a little bit better answer in the 20 minutes. The short answer is overlapping of time and schema. Schema means background information. That's what it means to me anyway. Background information on various things. And those schema would overlap. So I'd use one thing to learn another thing. And the other thing, of course, is almost everything I did part-time. So that I would basically overlap them. And when I got good at something, I would move on. So overlapping schema and time, moving on once I got to be good at something, and of course, along the way, developing some really interesting learning skills that help me get a jump start all the time. And the other last thing to tell you is a lot of taking that first step. Because I notice that so many people all the time talk about doing things, but they don't actually take the first step. They don't actually make that phone call and like make an appointment. You know, like, let's say you want to learn to fly. Nobody goes down and makes the appointment at a flight school, or calls a karate school and goes down, or calls a hypnotist and goes down. That's what they don't do. They don't go down there and meet with somebody and kind of kickstart the whole thing. You remember when Evelyn Wood invented, you guys are too young, but Evelyn Wood invented speed reading back in the 60s. And Evelyn Wood was fascinated with how people, could read so fast. And she'd ask somebody who's really a great reader, and she'd go, how do you read so fast? And the guy would go, I don't know. She goes, do you mind if I watch you? She watched them, she figured out what they were doing after a number of interviews, extrapolated a method, and came out with Evelyn Wood reading dynamics. Other people have done the same. People like me who have no particular talent for anything just sit there and watch other people and ask the right questions, and before you know it, you start getting a method. So I found that I was doing 12 things. Here are the 12 things. I found that my wide exposure to things led to a lot of interest. My interest led to a lot of desire. After I had the desire for things and I would get answers, I would start integrating those answers I was getting. And then I had good learning skills, I took action. It's not whether you're doing the 12 things, even if you're probably all doing them or most of them, it's how much you're doing them, how consistently you're doing them. If I could only name 3 things that I think are the real drivers that make the most difference, forget the other 9, there are these 3 things. Your desire for something, your ability to learn, and the support of other people. But I'm not so much interested in just like saying, well, that's what does it. What I never see at so many speakers is they never tell you how to do it. And I think the important thing about this is, how do you really amp up your desire and your interest? It's not that we're all not interested. We're interested sometimes, but how do we get like insanely interested? Here's a story. A lady gets up in the morning and she looks at her little boy and she says, you're going to get to go to the fabric store with mommy today. Need you to get ready, get in the car. What do you think happens? Right? The little kid can't find his coat, he's got an earache, he can't comb his hair. Everything is taking forever, right? He's dragging along, he's kind of whiny. He thinks maybe he's coming down with a cough. All of a sudden the mother says, oh my God, I was so wrong, that's tomorrow, we're gonna go to Disneyland today. What happens? Boom, the kid's hair is combed, his cold is gone, his cough is all healed, right? He's got all of his clothes on, he's found his mom's car keys, he's in the car seat, all buckled up, and the car's already started, right? All it takes is just mom to get get in the car. What's the difference? The difference is the kid really wants to go to Disneyland. So I think the first thing I would say about desire is, if you know yourself and you figure out what your real motivations are, if you really know what you like what was the mom's motivation might have been to go to the fabric store, right? In other words, what drove her? Maybe creativity. She wants to make a new dress or something and she's excited about that. But what drives the little boy? Any ideas? Fun. He wants to have fun, right? He wants to go to Disneyland. So what drives the boy is maybe different from what's driving the mom. So when they both had 2 different goals. So when it was the mom's motivation, which was driving things, in other words, going to the fabric store, the kid was down. Once you're really excited and interested about something, interest releases energy. So the first way to build desire is to find out what you're really interested in and try to set that up. Try to do things that are aligned with your interest. And we ask, how can I ramp up the interest? Well, the first way to ramp up your interest is to hang around people who are passionate about things. I think that may be the most important thing. If you hang around, like if you're trying to learn the guitar, or you're trying to learn karate, or you're trying, whatever you want to learn, if you're hanging around with people who are just like insane for that, who are really excited about it, that's going to rub off on you. It's so easy to get really excited when everybody around you is getting really excited. People have a huge influence on you that way. But I want to tell you how to get what people are doing when they want to hang out with you. I call it TED, not the TED conference, but I was investigating, when I wrote the book Psychology of Deception, I was looking at what makes the best magicians good, or the best salesmen, because magicians are people who try to make you believe things that aren't true. A really hard sales job. I found out that we all have three things: trustworthiness, expertness, and dynamism. We're being graded on all the time. Like right now, you're probably giving me some kind of mark in your head for trustworthiness, expertness, and dynamism. Trustworthiness really means, is this guy what he says he is? Does he do what he says he's going to do? Does he fulfill his commitments? Does he show up when he says he will? That kind of thing. Expertness is all about what you can bring to the party. Do you really know what you're talking about? Do you have the background you say you do? Can you actually contribute something that's of value to whatever you're doing? And dynamism has to do with just personal qualities, like hand gestures, or not putting your hands in your pocket while you're speaking, or picking your nose, or all the things that you might do that are attractive in this culture. So dynamism has to do with your energy, how compelling you are, how hooky you are, that kind of thing. So all the time, and you can't just have two and not three. You've all seen like car salesmen who are really dynamic and they may know what they're talking about, but you don't trust them at all, right? Or you've seen people who are experts and they're really trustworthy, but they're just so not compelling to listen to because they're really boring, right? And they just don't have any personal qualities. Being around people who are really enthusiastic and choosing to be around them, finding them out. You go someplace and you find, like in a class, you might have a bunch of people who really love to learn and they're really serious, and you got a whole bunch of other slackers who are goofing off. I found out if you can hang out with the people who are doing really well and they care about being there, you'll do way better. Who you hang out with really matters. The second way that I noticed for me to get really excited was I took a bunch of acting classes, and I found out that especially a lot of us don't express emotion very well. And what happens is you can actually increase your ability to express emotion. And so I started learning how to express my emotions way more. And it took an acting class to do it. And I noticed that people in the acting class also increased their vocabulary, because directors would have to say, here, I want you to do it, but I want to see this. Well, these are words that we didn't use very much, especially men. Hate to say it, but men don't have as many words for emotions, and they don't actively use them, and they certainly don't display them. So I started learning how to display my emotions more, and as I learned how to do it through acting classes, I found that my real emotions were all amped up. And when my emotions were amped up, when you get excited about things, what happens? Your focus actually gets bigger. I want to talk about that too, stretching. I use stretching for three things: for memory, for focus, and for reading. Here's how you do it. You just basically read for full comprehension. Take anything you've got, read it for full comprehension. Then put that down, read it so fast, read the next chapter so fast that you can't possibly understand it. Just don't even worry about understanding. Just read it really, really fast. Skim it. Read every word, but way too fast to understand. Then go back and time yourself reading the next chapter for full comprehension. What do you find? I'll tell you what I found with lots of corporate clients. Let's say you're reading 300 words a minute, and now I make you do the scramble where you're all out of your comfort zone. And now you come back, what do you think happens next? You read 350 words a minute. Then I do it again, another half hour later, I make you read way, way, way too fast. We come back, you're 400 words a minute. Now this has a natural limit to it. You can't just sit there all day going, and 450, and 5, and 5. It doesn't work like that. Because at some point, there's kind of a limit to what we can really comprehend. And even now, when you see speed reading records being set, very often these are people who are not, the way they test you for comprehension can be pretty liberal, let's just say that. But to read for full comprehension, you can ramp that up. You can do the same thing, by the way, with your attention span. Right now, you can only pay attention to like a speaker for 20 minutes. And you're thinking, well, I wonder if I really try. And you go in with the intent of, I'm going to pay attention for 25 minutes. Well, what happens is by stretching that, again, every time you zoom back, your attention span gets a little bit longer. What's the weird result of that? There's some studies now showing that maybe one of the reasons that people's attention span is lower is because their short-term memory only can hold so much. You all know that most of us can hold about the same amount, but there is a variation. What I found is by this stretching method, if you can increase your short-term memory, like how many things you can hold on the little slate, like as we're talking, and if you do that, what happens is your actual attention span gets longer. Right? So, and by doing the reading, by being able to hold more of the reading in your mind, what happens? Again, they all feed each other. By stretching one thing, you end up stretching the other things. A change in one produces a change in the other. It's amazing. And all of a sudden, you start growing geometrically. The next thing about desire is what I call evoking. And what I found is whenever I see something or I'm doing something that I really want to get excited about and I want to love it more, what I do is I pair it with something I really love in my head, or I look for the best example, or I look for people who just give me the chills when I watch them who do it. And when I do that, I make sure that I actively pair those things in my head, because things that wire together fire together. Things that wire together, or things that fire together, wire together. Either way you like to say it. What happens is, if you can get those two thoughts to fire at the same time, and primacy is a big deal. I mean, the first time you do it, don't wait. Do it soon, because otherwise you become kind of jaded and you're not as open to this kind of thing. But when you're first starting to do something, if you can get those ideas firing at the same time on purpose, you got to do this on purpose in your head, what'll happen is you can actually join those things together. And then let's say that you just take an emotion that you've got and you pair that with something you really want, with some new activity. If you can get those things right from the get-go firing together, they'll wire together. And then when one comes, you'll get the other. This is how you can use emotional triggers and things like that to actually just snap yourself into various states. It's amazing. I used to take pro athletes, not so much anymore, but I took pro athletes, and let's say like golfers. A golfer would want to have incredible power when they drive the ball. Then they want to be able to ramp that down when they're on the fairway, and they want to get really focused when they're putting. So I would give people these triggers to get people where they could actually regulate. They could go from to really quiet, and really focused, like within milliseconds. And people were able to just change gears like crazy for whatever you need. So it was kind of a way of like mood control or arousal control. So those are some of the things that I do for to actually increasing desire. Oh, I want to tell you one more thing about playing. And this really goes into focusing too. The other day, about a week ago, I'm fixing my helicopter. I'm fixing the winch that pulls the airplane in and out of my wife's hangar. And I've got this young assistant. He's a magician training with me, and he's with me. He's helping me. And he stopped by because I was going to give him a ride in a helicopter and let him fly it, and he was all excited. And so he comes down there, and I tell him I got to get this winch down for my wife, and I said, I need a wrench for here. And he goes, I'll go get all the open end wrenches. I go, no, first you got to guess. He goes, guess what? I go, you got to guess what wrench, what size wrench. I said, I'm guessing 7/16. And he says, well, I don't want to guess. I go, no, I don't want to guess either, because I could be wrong. So you just don't want to be wrong, and you don't want my disapproval. But you'll get my disapproval if you don't guess. So he goes, okay. So he guesses. Of course, we're both wrong. And so he goes, well, what's that about? And I go, well, wasn't it more fun when you're like guessing? Now what are you doing? Because we're guessing and we're making a public commitment about what you think it might be, what's the difference? You got a stake in it, right? You're at a horse race and you aren't betting on a horse, or the guy next to you is betting on the horse. Who cares more if the horse comes in? The guy betting on the horse, right? Anyway, the other thing, by the way, is mnemonics, memory. Memory is huge. My saying is always, if you can't remember it, you can't use it. And the problem is, if you're like right now, let's say the lights went out. And I know that I read in a book somewhere about speaking on the podium that there's some clever thing to say when the lights go out. But I can't remember it. Well, if I can't remember it, what the hell good is it to me, right? So the point is, if you can't remember something, you can't actually use it when the time comes. And if you don't use it, it probably won't get into your arsenal, right? The same like with a word. If you can't remember a word, you won't use the word. If you don't use the word, it probably won't be in your arsenal of words. Pretty soon you just won't use it. Every single one of these steps requires action. Reduce everything you want to do to an action you can do right now. Reduce everything to an action you can do right now and then do it. That's the secret. But most people don't do that. They stay out there in the world of ideas, but they don't actually get it down to like make that phone call or get the phone number to make the phone call. So you gotta really have that action with every step. Action is not a separate step. It's in every single one of these things.